The Candyman's Return, a Halloween Nightmare. Table of Contents. Greystone Manor, a legacy of fear. The town whispered of Greystone Manor. A husk of forgotten grandeur, it loomed over the landscape, a monument to decay and despair. Built in the late 1800s, the manor had once housed the wealthy elite. Now only shadows and secrets remained. Stories clung to its crumbling facade like cobwebs, each more chilling than the last. But one story echoed louder, a story whispered with bated breath and terrified eyes, the legend of the Candyman. They said he haunted the manor's mirrors, a malevolent spirit summoned by those foolish enough to utter his name 5 times. He was a spectre of vengeance, they said, his right hand replaced with a grotesquely hooked blade. He craved fear, they whispered, and he found it in the darkest corners of Greystone Manor.
5 times. Say his name 5 times into the mirror and he'll appear.
It's just a story. Don't be stupid, Jake.
It was Halloween night, and a group of teenagers, emboldened by youthful bravado and liquid courage, stood before the manor's rusted gates. They were drawn to the legend, a mix of fear and fascination in their eyes. There was Jake, the ringleader, always pushing the boundaries. Emily, the skeptic, trying to mask her unease. And then there was Ben, quiet and observant, his gaze lingering on the manor's darkened windows. The dare hung in the air, heavy with unspoken dread. But Jake, fueled by the group's nervous laughter, was already pushing open the creaking gates. He was determined to prove his bravery, to conquer the legend of the Candyman.
Candyman, Candyman, Candyman.
Don't do it, Jake.
The air inside the manor was thick with dust and decay. The only light came from the moon, filtering through the grime-covered windows, casting long, eerie shadows. The teenagers made their way through the dilapidated hallways, each footstep echoing in the unsettling silence. They found the communal bathroom on the 2nd floor. The air was heavy with moisture, the stench of mildew clinging to their throats. The mirror above the cracked sink was a dark, tarnished rectangle, reflecting their nervous faces back at them.
Don't do it, Jake.
But Jake was already staring at his reflection, a strange glint in his eyes.
Candyman, Candyman.
Emily turned away, unable to watch. Ben, however, couldn't tear his gaze from Jake's reflection. He felt a prickle of unease crawl down his spine. Something wasn't right.
Candyman, Candyman.
As Jake uttered the 5th and final name, a low groan echoed through the bathroom. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to deepen, pressing in on them like suffocating darkness. The reflection in the mirror rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. Jake stumbled back, his eyes wide with terror. The face staring back at him was no longer his own. It was gaunt, with eyes that burned with an unholy light. A grotesque smile stretched across its pale lips, revealing rows of jagged teeth. A low growl emanated from the figure in the mirror, and the teenagers watched in horror as the silver surface began to crack, spiderweb lines spreading from the center. Then, with a deafening shatter of glass, the figure emerged. He was tall and skeletal, his skin stretched taut over bones. He wore a long, tattered coat, and his right hand ended in a hooked blade, rusted and stained a sickening brown. The Candyman was real. Screams filled the air as the teenagers scrambled back, their blood turning to ice in their veins. The Candyman moved with unnatural speed, his eyes locked on them, a terrifying hunger in their depths. They bolted from the bathroom, adrenaline pumping through their veins, the sound of their own terrified gasps echoing in their ears. The chase was on. The Candyman pursued them through the labyrinthine hallways of the manor, his ragged breathing close behind. They could hear him dragging his hook along the walls, the screeching metal a terrifying soundtrack to their flight. They dodged fallen debris and leapt over crumbling staircases, their hearts pounding in their chests. Emily tripped, falling heavily. Ben stopped, reaching down to help her up, but Jake pulled him along. "Leave her, we have to keep moving."
We're going to die.
There, help me with this.
They reached a dead end. A heavy oak door bolted shut. They rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The Candyman's laughter echoed behind them, cold and menacing. They were trapped. Emily whimpered, her voice thick with terror. Miguel scanned their surroundings, his mind racing. There had to be another way out. He noticed a boarded-up window at the end of the hallway. "There!" he shouted, pointing. "Help me with this!" They threw themselves against the boards, splintering the rotten wood. The Candyman's shadow fell upon them, his laughter echoing in the confined space. The sacrifice, one life for many. Just as they were about to break through, the Candyman reached them. He grabbed Emily, his hook glinting in the pale moonlight. She screamed, her eyes wide with terror.
Take me, let her go, take me instead.
The Candyman paused, his head tilting to the side as if considering. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he released Emily and turned his gaze upon Jake. His smile widened, revealing those awful teeth once more.
Another soul for my collection.
Before Ben or Emily could react, the Candyman plunged his hook into Jake's chest. Jake's scream died in his throat, his eyes widening in shock and betrayal. Then, with a final, gut-wrenching cry, he went limp. Aftermath, haunted by the memory. The boards finally gave way, and Ben pulled Emily through the opening. They didn't look back. They didn't stop running until they were far away from Greystone Manor. The horrifying image of Jake's lifeless eyes burned into their minds. They told their story, but no one believed them. They were just teenagers seeking attention, they said. But Ben and Emily knew the truth. They had looked into the eyes of the Candyman. They had witnessed his cruelty firsthand. The legend continues. He will be back. Greystone Manor stood untouched, a silent testament to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. The legend of the Candyman continued, whispered in hushed tones by those brave enough to utter his name. For they knew the truth. The Candyman was real, and he wasn't finished. He would be back, drawn to fear and despair, his hook thirsty for more blood. A warning. Beware the reflection. And so the tale serves as a warning. Beware the reflections in darkened glass. Beware the whispers in the shadows. And above all, beware the name you dare not speak. For the Candyman is waiting, and he always collects his due.